Every organization deals with third parties. Every organization. If you're a hospital or some other organization provides your computers, right? Some other organization provides your devices, your X-ray devices and more. You don't manufacture them. If you're a school, you get your computers from somewhere. So every organization deals with vendors and third parties. Now, vendors and third parties are companies that provide products or services to an organization. They can deliver you software, hardware, services, products, tangible products. And vendor assessment involves evaluating the security practices of those vendors. You want to make sure that your vendors and your third parties are secure. You want to make sure that you can ensure their security so that it doesn't affect your own organization, because vendors can be potential entry points for cyber threats. Generally, the mistake that many organizations do is that they trust their vendors so much that they don't really check their security, and then they are vulnerable. You have software vendors, you have hardware vendors, you have your cloud security providers, consulting firms, HR, data centers, and more. Every organization deals with either one of those. So how do you assess your vendors? You can perform penetration testing. So this is conducting security testing on your vendor systems to identify vulnerabilities. You can ensure that vendors meet security requirements and protect their data with penetration testing. So you actually test their systems, or you require them to test their systems and provide you with results. That's penetration testing. They do actual live simulations of external hackers to see how their system will respond. You have a right to audit clause. A right to audit clause where you include clauses in contracts to grant the right to audit vendor practices. So periodic reviews and security policies of your vendors to make sure that they are practicing accurate security, but it has to be in the signature. You need evidence of internal audits. So you require vendors to provide evidence of their internal security audits, even though it will not always be super accurate, because internal audits are not as accurate and revealing as external audits. You have independent assessments. So you can use third-party assessments to verify vendor security practices. You use a middleman. It's usually unbiased. They have nothing to gain. And they assess your vendors and they provide you with results. You have a supply chain analysis. So you assess the security of the vendor supply chain. Who do they get their products from? How do they perform their supply chain processes? What are some risks from the third-party services used by the vendor? Now, how do you select your vendors as well? First, you perform your due diligence, perform investigations of potential vendors before engagement. You want to ensure that they meet security and legal requirements. You don't want to fall into a situation where you have to go to court because you were in bed with a very bad vendor. You want to make sure there is no conflict of interest. Identify any potential conflict of interest that may affect vendor relationships. And what are some agreement types that you can have with vendors and third parties? You have multiple of them. You have one called the Memorandum of Agreement, MOA. This is a formal agreement between parties outlining the terms of cooperation. What are the roles, responsibilities, and expectations of each member? Memorandum of Agreement, MOA. You have a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU. How is this different? This is a non-binding or informal agreement that both sides agree to. It is not necessarily a signed contract. It's usually informal and it's a precursor to a formal agreement. For example, this is usually what a memorandum of understanding could look like. So it's informal and it's not a signed agreement. You have a master service agreement. The master service agreement is a type of contract that outlines the overall terms of engagement for multiple services. An MSA, master service agreement. So to give you a few analogies, a memorandum of agreement, MOA, this is like two neighbors agreeing in writing to build specific sections of a shared garden. Neighbor A will plant the flowers, neighbor B will build the garden path. They outline what each of them will do, how they will do the work, and who is responsible for what. Now, this is in the formal contract. MOU is like two neighbors agreeing verbally to share the cost of a new fence between their properties, but they don't sign a formal contract. That's Memorandum of Understanding. MSA, Master Service Agreement, is like a homeowner making like a detailed long-term agreement with the handyman to handle all repairs and maintenance on a house over the next 12 months, over the next year. The homeowner doesn't specify the exact tax upfront, but agrees on terms, on pricing, on conditions. And when a specific task is needed, they will refer to the MSA for the overall terms and agree on the work. So hopefully these analogies can help you understand these better. Other type of agreements, you have an SLA. SLA, service level agreement, this is a contract that states that the service provider guarantees a certain level of service. So service provider is expected to perform with a certain level of metrics. And what are their responsibilities? What is the responsibility of the provider and the customer? The service level agreement. If the service is not delivered at the agreed upon level, then there are consequences. They can be financial, typically. For example, your internet service provider, maybe Xfinity or AT&T, they sign an SLA of 99.999%. This is commonly called the 5 nines of uptime of internet, which means that if you have 26 seconds of downtime internet per month, then you can fine them or they get fined. It's an SLA, service level agreement. What will I do for you? What are the performance metrics expected? Commonly seen between the cloud provider, cloud service provider, and the cloud customer. You have a non-disclosure agreement. Non-disclosure agreement is like a legal contract between parties. It outlines the confidential information that they will share, and they are obliged to protect confidentiality. This is used to foster trust between parties and to protect sensitive and confidential information. Generally, when you join an organization or after you leave, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. A business partner agreement, BPA, this is an agreement between business partners indicating the conditions of their relationship. And a work order or a statement of work is like a detailed document that specifies the work to be performed, the timelines, and the deliverables, clarity and alignment on project scopes and expectations. So you have business partner agreements between business partners. These are the partners A and B. These are the place of business, terms, the partnership name, and all the details required. Statement of work, this is what it would look like. What is the template, deliverable date, cost, terms, and more. So we talked about SLA, service level agreement, NDA, non-disclosure agreement, BPA, business partner agreement, and statement of work. Just for the analogy again, an SLA is like two neighbors agreeing on the maintenance of their shared garden. One neighbor will water the plants with 1 liter of water 3 times per week, while the other will trim the hedges once a month. You have to have performance metrics, and if one fails, then they'll pay the other one if they fail to follow their agreement. An NDA is like two neighbors that share plans for their future garden designs, and they agree that neither one will tell about the other's ideas. They'll keep it between themselves. If one neighbor plants to plant a specific type of flower, the NDA is a promise that the other won't reveal it to the neighbors or to anybody else, for example. Business partner agreement is like two neighbors agreeing to buy gardening supplies together throughout the year, and instead of deciding on each purchase individually, they agree on a general plan upfront to share the costs beforehand. And the statement of work is like two neighbors agreeing on a detailed plan to renovate their shared garden. Who will plant which flowers? What is the deliverable date? Who will install the irrigation system? What are the individual tasks? Timeline, cost, material, so they both exactly know what to expect. Now, third-party risk assessment is continuously monitoring vendor performance with all security requirements, ensuring that they maintain security standards. You can use questionnaires to gather information about your vendor security practices and usually establish engagement rules. What are the terms? What are the conditions? There has to be clear communication on expectation and responsibilities.
All right, guys, that concludes our course for today. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoyed it. And make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms, which includes YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Of course, do not forget to order our awesome Amazon flashcards that you can get for just $15, and they're awesome because they help you study.